I'm recording.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
This is Danny.
Hi, Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hey, so I'm coming in on an iPad and I'm not seeing where the chat feature is located on that. Any ideas?
It's all the way up on the top, like where it has the red leaf, or I guess it disappears. So just touch your screen and a menu should appear on the top, and it's...
I've got audio, video, invite, participants, and share.
Under participant.
Okay. Ah, I see. Okay, let me give this a shot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Forgot to mute it.
How much is they go at least sometimes I go twice.
Learning experience, but I have no language.
And then I eat my lunch. The only thing I eat like in between cries. So.
We come a long way from when we
I think I'm not, because yeah.
first it's not big enough to catch them all.
One of the things that we use.
There's only so much you can connect. That's another user.
How's everyone doing?
Doing good. Who said that?
We're here from RMH and Rockingham. RMH.
Okay, great.
So,
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Are y'all in the same room there?
yeah, we'll have two others coming up behind me. They're just finishing up some stuff, and
Okay. Okay. Are you Eric?
that would be me.
Okay, Eric. I'm Mark. So
Nice to meet you, Mark.
yeah, good to meet you. So we're kind of Eric. I don't know if you had just got on, but we're having you just type in on the chat function that you guys are here, so that we'll know.
Okay.
We can see you all on the screen here, but we're also having you kind of we get to know everybody to type that in, if you don't mind. So anybody that just came on, if you could, just make sure you go in and type in just chat to us that you're here. I'm just going to, well, we still have a little bit more time here. I'm just going to go around as well, just with all of our sites, and just to kind of make sure that everybody is, at least most of everyone is here that's trying to get on. So we have Rockingham, and I know we have Lynchburg with us. Yep, okay. Danny, I know you're with us. So from NIH, How about Lauren? Are all the residents from York in the same room with you? Looks like the site is muted. Unmute yourself, Lauren. You're muted. Maybe Rich. No, she's gone. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Lauren, we are recording this. There's another resident that could not be here as well, so we'll make sure that you all get the recording.
Okay, that's okay, because our residency director was also going to come tonight.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. How about Novant Presbyterian in Charlotte? Do we have you guys on the line with us?
Yes, yes, we're here.
Okay. I'm trying. Okay, I see. All right. Is everybody there with you all? Are you all in the same room?
Yes. We're missing. We're not all in the same room.
Jen is on there.
But all of us are on though.
Okay. All right. So everybody from Presbyterian is on. All right. How about Joshua Welch? Are you with us?
Here. And go back to where you just were.
Okay.
I'm here.
I don't know how you got there.
Okay.
You're on there?
There's some of y'all that don't have a webcam, so I'm hearing your voice. Joshua,
What happens if you drop the speaker thing?
do you have a webcam?
No, because it's set to your speakers.
I see. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna see
If you have a webcam for next time, guys, use that so we can actually see you as well. We find that helps to actually see you and hear you, but we can hear you. So
Yeah.
We can do interpretive dance where we're talking.
how about Meritus Health in Hagerstown?
I have no idea.
You guys with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Gina and Caitlin, right?
Maybe it seems like it's recorded.
I'm here.
Okay. Who was that just said I'm here?
Spinning ball with Dan.
Caitlin from Meredith.
Oh, great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Caitlin. How about Gina? Is she with us?
This is so frustrating.
Yes, I'm here.
This is as far as I got. Crap.
How about Carillion Roanoke? Are you guys with us? I see you. Okay. Everybody in this? Oh, cool. Very good. All right. How about Novant, Forsyth, and Winston-Salem? Is Novant, Forsyth with us?
This is Jennifer Worley. I'm here.
Okay, Jennifer, hi.
Hey,
Jennifer,
Sedona, I'm here.
who else?
Sedona.
Okay. Are you all in the same, you're all at different sites? Is anybody together there?
Yeah.
Okay. Just make sure that you, again, Google chat us to make, so that we know that you're here in case we kind of missed you. So just make sure you Google chat us. All right, how about Appalachian College of Pharmacy?
This is Molly and I'm here. We're all separate.
Okay. Hi, Molly.
Hello.
This is Erin. I'm here also.
Hello, Aaron.
Randall, I'm here.
Oh, very good. Okay. Looks like everybody's there. All right. And then we have Nicole. I think I saw it. Reston. Nicole, didn't I see you earlier?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. How about Heather?
I know how to use a camera.
I'm here.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see you. Very good. All right, and I think it's just our residents here. Let's see. Rachel. Oh, talking about Rachel Coleman? Oh, she's not okay. She's asking. Yeah, she's actually probably JV, yeah. We might get her in here to teach us.
I know. Where are they frozen?
Did I hear feedback? It is again. It is not me. Who is that? I can mute all to fix that. I need to. So I would put her. I'll just work the remote and just spin the camera around to whoever's talking. That's irritating. Let me try and mute all and I'll just. Okay, everybody is muted, so that should have gone away. Can you guys still hear us okay? Nod. Okay, good. Thank you. So we are not muted. They are. So we will go to- We're set up for that. It's already on. I click screen share and Canvas pops up and then I'm because I know that I'm trying to go over our forms and guidelines and stuff like that. So I'll just spin the camera around to her, click that one button and we're there.
I've just realized it.
And
I wouldn't mind. So tell me what I'm doing again. Going over the portfolio. Just in general.
basically,
Yeah.
just did you link something?
There's stuff there, but we don't have to go to it. Some people have already tried going to it. People are.
I would.
Not a problem.
Yeah, so things about
Not a problem.
It's Wednesday, you go after halfway through your. I just like Wednesday.
Okay, so 6 o'clock. You're right.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to our 2014 Pharmacy Residency Teaching and Learning Curriculum Program. It's good to have everyone with us, both here in Winchester and across several states, actually. And so hopefully everyone can see and hear us okay at the remote sites. And so hopefully you can. If not, I guess, should they chat or just chat and let us know? So my name is Mark Johnson. I am a faculty member here at Shenandoah and also the Director of Postgraduate Education, and we're very pleased to have everybody join us with this program. This program is now in its 8th year, and you may note that the reason I had to hesitate about the name of it is we just recently changed the name of it. ASHP just put out some guidelines on these teaching and learning programs. We used to call these teaching certificate programs, and they are recommending that we don't call them teaching certificate programs anymore. And so our new name is the Teaching and Learning Curriculum Program. So instead of it being a certificate program. And so anyway, but it's still kind of the same. And so this year we actually have currently 57 participants taking this program. And so that's both residents, and we have several preceptors taking this program as well. And again, we're delighted that you're with us tonight and that you'll be with us this year. You can see locally here from our outside sites, we have, let's see, 3, 4, 5 residents here, at least at the moment. We will have a couple of others, the one that cannot be here tonight. And so, but you will see us here in the room. And so our residents here, we also have a couple of residents that are affiliated residents as well. They're joining us remotely from Reston Hospital in Northern Virginia. But we have our program kind of broken down to both on-site and remote sites. We're going to go through the guidelines a little bit here in a few minutes with kind of a little bit of the differences between those two. But overall, I think this program really is to help you become a better teacher. And so in pharmacy, most of you all, if not all of you, at some point will teach. Now, teaching takes many different roles. It takes many different, looks very different, but basically you may go on faculty at some point, you may not, you may precept, you may do in-services. So all of that is actually teaching. And so this program is to help you with all of those different experiences. We've been doing this a while now, and so I think hopefully we've got it down so that we give you what you need for helping you with your teaching. But this is a lifelong process. You will not learn everything that you need to know within this first year. In fact, I've been doing this now for 15 years, and I still don't know everything I need to know. And so I think you will find that out, but this is to help you in your teaching and to help you become a better teacher. And again, so that you will also develop lifelong learning in what you do in terms of teaching. And so what we want to do tonight, we have several things we want to get accomplished. We want to kind of go over the guidelines for the program. They were just recently linked today, the updated guidelines. We're going to go through those. We also will have Dr. Karen Schultz, and we'll do some more introductions here in a few minutes. She's going to be going over the teaching philosophy requirement for this program and a little bit about that. We have Ann Marchant joining us as well, who is going to be discussing understanding and engaging learners. And then Richard Pierce is going to be going over our teaching portfolios and what that is. And so we have a lot of things we want to kind of get accomplished and get this done by 8 o'clock. So that's our goal for tonight. I want to give you just a little bit more intro on the program itself. As you know, this program is broken down into several different components. The first is the pedagogy seminars, which is what we are having our first tonight. We will do this once a month. And the topics that we have will all be linked on Canvas for you. And within a couple of a couple of each month we have about 2 different topics that we're going to discuss, and so they will generally be voiceover slides, or also it could be some readings as well. And so the goal is to have you complete the work before you come to these pedagogy live discussions. And this is what this is meant for. This is more for a live discussion to help you to apply the materials that we're going to be going through. And so this is more application-based with these online discussions. But that's a part of it. The pedagogy seminars is to give you some of the background and the theories and whatnot behind teaching. Also, we have didactic experiences, and each resident is required to complete 2 of those, and Amber's going to go through those a little bit more here in a second. We also have experiential experiences, and so each of you will precept a student on a rotation. We generally do that in the spring. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, but anyway, they are the precepting experiences. And then we have small group facilitation experiences that you will get out of this. And that differs a little bit depending on if you're on site or if you're remote site. And again, Amber's going to go through that here a little bit more. And then you have the teaching philosophy component that Karen will go over a little bit more tonight. And then the teaching portfolio, which is what Richard will go over. And so this program is pretty comprehensive if you look at what we do. It's to give you the theories behind teaching and best practices. It's also to have you practice these in all of those different formats that we talked about. And then as with any residency, there's a lot that goes into self-reflecting on your experiences and also being evaluated. And so there's a lot of that. And so for our off-site programs, you will note that you'll have mentors at your sites that help you with that, those materials. And then for the on-site programs, as you guys know, you all have mentors. And so your mentors are Amber and myself. And so we'll be going over that a little bit more tonight, actually after this session tonight, to kind of give you a little bit more details about that. Also, for the off-sites, we will be sending out kind of the School of Pharmacy mentors for you all as well. And so we will let you know about that. That'll be kind of in a separate email that we send to you, but it'll kind of be your contact here at the School of Pharmacy for some of these materials as well. Okay? So with that as kind of an introduction into our program, I'm going to turn it over to Amber Wessner, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about some of the nuts and bolts of the program and kind of go over the forms and things like that. And all this is linked on Canvas for you, and I think, Richard, you're going to, can they see Canvas now?
Right now. We have a little program change. We're going to let Karen go first.
Okay.
If possible.
Okay, I'll sit since your time is tight tonight. Yeah, so I can go after you. That's not a problem. Yep. So I'll switch places with you.
Yeah, come on down.
Yeah.
Right here.
So let me introduce Karen. She waves. Karen is our director at Center University for the Center for Public Service and Scholarship. And so that really doesn't aptly kind of describe what Karen does at the university, but Karen originally, I guess, is a respiratory therapist by training, who was the head of our respiratory therapy program for several years. Was also on our School of Pharmacy faculty, and she is also an educator, and again, heads up our Center for Public Service and Scholarship. She has, for a number of years now, coordinated our teaching philosophy part of this teaching certificate program. And so what I've asked Karen to do tonight is to go through the importance of a teaching philosophy. Why do we even do this? To give you a little bit more about that. I know that many of you all have kind of attempted a teaching philosophy already, and we have some more details about it that I'll also go through as we go through. But Kieran's going to kind of get the juices flowing and help you all to kind of determine best teachers and things like that you've encountered in your careers up to this point. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kieran.
Thank you, Mark. Boy, get juices flowing. Let's get going here. First of all, welcome. It is an honor to be with you. I must say the group that I'm with and all of you remotely, congratulations on all of your accomplishments. I really am in awe of what you have accomplished. And the fact that you're taking the time to do this, truly, I am very grateful for you. Perhaps one reason why we're all here is that we have had and do have great teachers. So before I try to attempt what Mark said in terms of talking about the importance of a teaching philosophy statement, let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask, would you please think in your mind picture a great teacher that you had. Just think for a moment. Can be preschool all the way up to now. All right, now I want to see a show of hands when you've thought of that person. I want you to be picturing that person in your mind. That great teacher, all right, I see one hand. That great teacher that made a huge difference in your life. All right, I've got hands all here. Okay, very good. All right, could somebody tell me what was it about that teacher that you're remembering him or her right now? What is it about that teacher? And first come, first serve on audio people that are remote. Or unmute. Is anybody unmuted?
Hey, over here, Carillion.
There you go, Carillion.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about a teacher that I thought had a great impact on me is, I guess, someone that allowed me to ask questions and, worked with me to kind of find the answer instead of just giving me the answer.
Ooh, love it. Was this teacher early on in your life? Later in life?
No, it was pretty much later in life.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Someone else.
Amanda from Centra.
Great. Thank you.
My teacher was a Latin teacher from high school, and she was just very passionate and animated, but not just passionate about the actual teaching and us gaining that knowledge, but also in just being engaged in her students' full lives, trying to grow them as individuals and not just in the subject area.
Ooh, and how did she do that when you say beyond the subject matter?
She really in class would just take interest, but then would try and do a lot of extracurricular through a lot of extracurricular activities. I don't really know how to kind of word it any better, but just kind of took it outside of the classroom and just showing just wanting to know general personal growth and what was happening in lives. Such.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. It's really interesting. Often Latin teachers are mentioned. We need to do a study on that, I think. Who else? We got somebody here in Winchester.
I don't know if this.
Can you hear?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I would
Go ahead and
say
introduce
it was.
Yeah.
My name's Shyla Ryder. I am a resident at the Martinsburg VA in Martinsburg, West Virginia. The person I immediately thought of was my softball coach, who is not a traditional teacher, but I learned so many life lessons from her, and she applied everything to just like realize how you can continue to make yourself better and why you're doing something, and that's why I thought of her immediately, even though she's not your traditional teacher you would think of in the classroom.
Love that too, and an excellent point. Coaches, again, that's a whole nother area of literature of how we learn. So thank you very much. Okay, one more comment about a great teacher that just comes to mind. Who is this? I see. I'm seeing some chatting here. The term's passionate. A great listener. Whew. Okay. Anybody else wanting to add something? It's the first time that never a preschool teacher has been, or somebody from back in our long days. So, as your, okay, one more, accountability. Josh, can you put on a little bit more about accountability? And I'll read another one while maybe if you can expand on accountability. I'm seeing enthusiasm, mastery, knowledge, great mastery of knowledge in order to be able to teach, motivational. I think it's helpful when we're writing this teaching philosophy statement of of characteristics that were helpful to you to learn. And thinking of a teacher perhaps that inspired you. Little bit later on, we can. I'll be happy to share through Mark, perhaps as we're actually beginning to write the actual philosophy statement. Some of the things that the mechanics of it, such as. Having done this now for how many years have we done this? Did you say 8? Yeah. I've read a lot of them, and there are some things that are coming up, some grammar things that I'll kind of put out there so that we can get beyond that. But I think if you focus on what has helped you learn, and frankly, what role do we take to facilitate learning? What is our role? And again, let me ask you about that. What the traditional role? Can you give me some feedback of what is a traditional role of teaching?
This is Erin from Appalachian.
Thank you, Erin. Yep.
I think it kind of depends on where you're at. Like you were saying about the beginning of back at preschool, kindergarten. At that point in time, it's more of being a leader and the person that's providing direction. But I think as we grow and get into whether it be high school and then furthering our education in higher education institutions, it's more of a facilitator rather than that individual being in front of the classroom to direct and lead only. Okay, a facilitator of learning. Okay, as opposed to, as you just said, a director per se. Am I capturing? Yeah, boiling down to director versus facilitator.
Yep. All right. What other role might we take as we are facilitating learning?
Mentor.
Okay. The idea of being a mentor. Okay. A resource. And I go back to, I'm seeing a guide to students to help them understand new information and apply that information. As literature and as we learn more about outcomes of learning and teaching, we more and more are not so much having the sage on the stage, but this facilitation of learning. So I'm hoping that as you begin to formulate a philosophy of teaching, as opposed to writing a syllabus, that you can take into, be honest of where you think your own particular role is. There's no wrong or right, but to keep in mind of where we are most comfortable and where we can grow to. As Mark was saying, we've perhaps been teaching a long time and we still don't, you know, we still keep growing. And I think that's the important part. Let me ask you now too, where will you teach or facilitate learning? Where will that happen? And let me ask you as learners, where have you learned? Has it always been in the classroom? Where is perhaps one of the most unusual places maybe that you've learned? I think we've had one, the softball field, right?
At home, just every day.
Okay, at home. Where else?
I learn every day from my nieces and nephews.
Okay.
During volunteering activities.
I heard volunteering.
During like practical experiences with preceptors or volunteering activities with them.
Okay, right. I would challenge us to think perhaps in a hallway, in a casual conversation in the cafeteria. Again, where are our teaching roles? Is it always going to be in a classroom? So in your teaching philosophy statement, I would, again, challenge you to think beyond what we might think of as traditional classrooms. I will perhaps go into one mechanic. There is a big difference between writing a teaching philosophy statement and writing a syllabus. A syllabus is certainly going to contain how you come up with grades for somebody. That's really important. And attaching rubrics. How are you going to grade a presentation of a student? What are you going to look for? That's not necessarily a teaching philosophy statement. So again, as we get a little closer to perhaps turning in the teaching philosophy statements, we can go into some of those mechanics. But I would encourage you to think widely, to be honest, to think thoughtfully. And I've got to admit, I get so inspired by reading these. I would look forward to being a student of all of you as best I possibly could. What questions do you have? Or Mark, is there anything else that would be helpful for me to go over? We're going to be spending more time later in the semester, but just thought I'd see if there's anything. I wish I could be with you every week. It's a great group.
What do you think? So for them, what do you think is the importance of writing teaching philosophy? Why do we write teaching philosophy? So
who was a great philosopher said an unexamined life is one that I'm really butchering it, but an unexamined life is one that can be far richer. I wrote my teaching philosophy statement, gosh, when I had to, I had to turn in a promotional portfolio. But I make myself look at it at least once a year because I think we all keep growing. And I go back to it, actually I went back to it right before I came tonight. And I think it helps frame how we behave, how we relate to others, how we relate to colleagues, how we relate to our patients, and frankly, how we relate as facilitators of learning to those unexpected encounters. So I hope that's helpful explanation. I'll share with you one of my a couple words for my teaching philosophy. To me, teaching is an act of hospitality. It's an invitation. I can extend the invitation, but it's up to my learners to say, yeah, I'll go down this road with you. And it's certainly up to them to say no. So that's how I framed my teaching philosophy statement, and I tweak it, but that's the main concept behind it. that make sense? Mark, anything else?
No, I think, one of the things I think when on faculty, we are required to write a teaching philosophy, particularly when it comes to promotions, when you go up for promotion and whatnot. But still, I think a teaching philosophy, for you all as well, it just kind of tells a little about what you believe, basically. It's kind of what I believe in teaching. And do you think that that's going to stay the same? Do you think it's going to change some actually this year? And so what you may start off by writing right now, you find will change some actually during this year. And so, which is good. That's actually good. And so I don't think that, that it should stay the same. And what we're hoping is that you go through all the different components of the program this year, that your teaching philosophy will evolve, maybe not necessarily change, maybe evolve is a better word to use, but we want that kind of reflected in your teaching philosophy. And so the other thing, just from more of a clinician's perspective, you may be asked actually in a job to write up a philosophy of your practice, your practice philosophy. So your teaching philosophy could be your practice philosophy. And we also have had on faculty, you may actually have to write up your research philosophy, your scholarship philosophy. And so, if you go on faculty somewhere at some point, you may have to do this. If you go into practice, you still may have to do it, but it may be more of a practice philosophy. But regardless, it helps you, I think, to put a framework and kind of again, this is what I believe and this is how I approach things, kind of thing. So,
if I may add one more thing to that, beautifully stated, Mark. I think it's also important to not only what you believe about teaching, but what you believe about your learners. And that's a whole question that I think it would be fun. What is it you believe that adult learners bring to the table versus perhaps preschoolers? What's different about the adult learner? What do you believe about the adult learner? What is it different about you as an adult learning as opposed to a middle school? There's certain things that I think the act of hospitality, which is my teaching philosophy, can extend from preschoolers all the way up to octogenarians. But what all of us bring to the table as adult learners is very different. One of them is time, the demands. Certainly time is critical. To a preschooler, maybe not so much, but there are things that we have to take into consideration. So if you spend a little bit of time about writing down what is it that adults bring as an adult learner that's maybe different, I think that might be helpful to your teaching philosophy statement too. And I know you have a lot to cover tonight, so I don't want to go over my time. I must say I do have to soon take off, but you have a real treat in store with Dr. Ann Marchant that you're going to be hearing later this afternoon or this evening. So I'm just planting that seed of excitement for you. Yeah.
One other thing before Dr. Schultz leaves, and we'll just talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of the details of when things are due and things like that for the teaching philosophy. And so I think most of y'all have gotten on Canvas and looked what was attached, what was linked for the teaching philosophy. And you'll find in there was there was kind of a guideline to follow. It says developing your teaching philosophy. It kind of, if you follow that, it kind of takes you through some different steps into developing a teaching philosophy. And there's an article there that we've got linked as well. What we want you all to do is, if you haven't already done that, just take kind of an attempt at the teaching philosophy. in writing a teaching philosophy. Now, what we'll do is we'll kind of have your first draft, and we will actually send this out in an email, but Karen and I had talked about this last week, actually, is that we would have like a third of the groups teaching philosophies due in January. A third would be due in February. A third would be due in March. Now, Karen gives you feedback on all that. So she's going to look at 50-some teaching philosophies. But what Karen is going to do is, and again, we will let you know more of the details about this in email, and you break you down in those thirds. But basically, in January, to send a rough draft of that teaching philosophy after you've had time to think more about it, again, kind of get the, after you've had a few of the teaching experiences under your belt. And then Karen will get back with you within a couple of weeks with some feedback, and then we'll have a final draft due soon thereafter. And again, we'll give them some guidelines in terms of their due dates and stuff like that. But so that's kind of what we have in store. And then your final teaching philosophy will go into your portfolio, to your online portfolio. So generally, the teaching philosophy is about a page in length, I guess, in general, when you say.
Yeah.
It can be whatever.
Yeah.
But generally, it's about a page in length.
Right.
We kind of somewhat stopped short a little bit of giving you a lot of examples of teaching philosophies. And we do that for a reason. You could Google teaching philosophies and find as many teaching philosophies as you want. And you're welcome to do that. If you want an example or two, we could certainly provide that. But what we think is the best thing is that you come up with this, even if you look at some examples, is to write it on your own. Because it's your own thoughts. You don't want to really copy somebody else's. Now, you may take some elements that you like from there or something like that. But we really want this to be your own thoughts. Wouldn't you agree, Karen?
Yeah, and thank you, Mark, for saying that. I think it's really important, and even if you're wincing and you think, oh, I don't want to turn this in, it's you. And Mark never sees that first one. At least I don't think he does. You send it to me, and I actually turn them around really fast, and we can talk about it, and I use track changes, and I try to get it back really fast. So I would really urge you to do these questions that we talked about. Try to write it up. If you find a cool quote, fine. But this is yours. This is yours, and I think we'll have some fun with it, and hopefully it'll be worthwhile for you in your teaching.
And the one last thing is that we also emailed to everyone a survey that you should have done. This kind of like a pre-survey on this. Hopefully everybody's done that. If you haven't, please take a little bit of time before we really get into this and complete that pre-survey. And then we also survey you at the end when you're done with all this to see how far you've come. But we want you to kind of take that pre-survey for the teaching philosophy component, if you would. Okay.
Any questions before, for me in particular? Or you can always email me, and I'm happy to try to answer for you. Shirley, looks like we've got a lot of juices going here. Thank you, and all my best to you.
All right, thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's see.
Remember our choices.
So you want
to meet you all.
Where?
I'm going
You know what?
So similar.
How are you?
I know.
Good. You're all set up here. Canvas is open in the back room.
Alrighty, and that's the
That's the room. Spin that over to this. And there you go.
hello, everyone.
some introductions and what you take away.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Just
Text? Yeah, sure.
Let me know though if you know that doesn't have it, we can resend it.
What's that, the survey?
A few people might have missed it, and I sent it in the email.
It's working well so far.
Good.
Yeah.
I had some PowerPoints. Can I can.
Absolutely. Are they on
Last
Yeah,
one.
they're on Canvas.
Then what we'll do is
Yeah, just look. Okay, so we do this year. Yeah, let's pull them up first.
I'm just gonna pass these out to you guys. We can pass them around so everyone gets one of each. Their forms we're gonna talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, they were linked.
Oh no, like actually take one.
Oh,
Take
yeah.
one and then pass it, sorry. Lots and lots of squares. It's color coded. Unfortunately. Last one.
Just so I have a reference point. Maybe we'll do the instructions first before I share the screen, and that way.
I think you're ready to.
So let me see.
You. Okay. You go and let me see.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next presenter. We are very grateful to have Dr. Ann Marchant with us tonight. Ann is the director for the Shindo University Center for Teaching and Learning. She's going to be discussing understanding and engaging learners. I think you will really enjoy Ann's words. Ann is very knowledgeable. I went to a teacher seminar that she did last summer and learned a whole lot from her. And so she is incredibly helpful here at the university at our Teaching and Learning Center. And so this is kind of some of the, before we get into some of the actual practical aspects of our program, this is some of the theories and the importance of learning some of the different learning styles and whatnot that Ann's going to go over with us. And so I think you guys should have already seen her slides and the voiceover slides that she did, but I think Ann's going to then kind of take it to that next level and more discuss it tonight. So turn it over to Ann.
Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be with all of you, those of you who are joining remotely and those who are here. I always enjoy this program, and it's been just really rewarding to see this program grow tremendously over the past few years. So welcome, and I'm going to look forward to working with you. I'd like to actually start by just telling a little story. I was enjoying the end of Dr. Schultz's talk on teaching philosophies, and I was having a flashback to when I was a faculty out at Berkeley, and I was hiring new faculty, and I got the teaching philosophy of one fellow who had been highly recommended to us, but his teaching philosophy was that he thought he needed to be superior to his students, and he needed to dress better, and he needed to make sure that they knew their place, and they were inferior to his status. And I'm not exaggerating, it was like this. Needless to say, he was not hired. So I know they warned you about not looking at other examples. This would be an example not to follow. So anyway, I don't know if he was ever employed anywhere. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Are you folks who are joining remotely, can you see my screen okay? Do we have audio? Okay.
Most of them are muted, so.
Okay. Oh, they're muted. Okay. And so maybe, all right. Okay. Well, let's assume somebody will let me know if there's a problem. It all starts with learning objectives, right?
So anytime you want to teach anybody anything, you need to be thinking about what it is you want to accomplish. What is it that you want your learners to learn? And usually these are described in such a way that you say, at the conclusion of this lesson or conclusion of this course, the student will be able to, and you describe what it is that they're going to be able to do. And then you should also build into whatever it is you're teaching, a way to assess whether or not the learning was successful. It might be, in the case of a formal class, it might be a test. If you're mentoring somebody, you might have them replicate the activity to make sure they can do it. But you should always make sure that the learning was successful. One of the important principles of learning is that you need to always connect new knowledge to prior knowledge for successful learning. And if the prior knowledge isn't there, the new knowledge doesn't get successfully connected. And those of you who've done math, is anybody here besides me math phobic? Okay, all right, you can't go on, right, if your math foundation is not solid. And so that's a really good example of that kind of thing. Okay, so learning objectives are important and being able to assess those learning objectives. So we're going to go through the different learning objectives in a bit. I might also just give you another good example that comes to mind. If you were educated in the United States, probably at some point in time, you had a teacher who made you memorize the 5 Great Lakes, right? Can you come up with them on the top of your head? Yeah, okay. Probably somebody could learn them, but maybe somebody knows them, but probably most of us have to think about it, maybe come up with them, maybe not. Okay? All right. So, but imagine if I now tell you the acronym HOMES, H-O-M-E-S. Now, can you tell me the 5 Great Lakes? You got it, okay? And why is that? Because we had a link, we had a connection to that prior knowledge. That knowledge was there. It was there, but getting to it, having a trigger. And so being very intentional about your learning, having ways to connect knowledge turns out to be tremendously important for that deeper learning that we're finding out is the key to success. Education is expensive, it takes a lot of time, so we want to be successful at it and we want to use our time effectively. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, all right. I love this slide. Who was the best teacher you ever had, or the worst teacher you ever had, or maybe the best teaching or learning experience you ever had? Can you think back in maybe high school or grade school or college, doesn't matter, to a learning experience that was really great that you'll always remember, or maybe one that's left some scars that you'll always have? Anybody want to share some?
I can go. I think mine will be, of course, the best teaching experience. It actually was in pharmacy school. Dr. McPherson is someone who is very funny. Because her practice in hospice and she teaches like care of terminally ill. She is the only person I find that can teach that class successfully by using the depressed. Just because she introduces humor into her lectures, and she's someone who always connects to like real world applications. So this is what we're learning in the guidelines and all this beautiful stuff, but what's in practice? And so for one person who always stuck in my mind was Dr. McPherson.
Okay, now let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So humor is important, but what does humor tell you about the person who is teaching? If she wants to make you laugh, then she cares about your learning, okay? She's not just standing up there, reading slides because she's doing her job, right? She cares about whether or not you are learning effectively. And also, I think you implied that she knows her stuff really well, and she connected it to real world applications. So relevance of learning, those are all, I'm picking up on key points in just a few sentences you've said that tell me that was just a really fabulous teacher. Anybody else share a really good one or a really, really awful one?
A really awful one I had recently was a genetics teacher. Sorry, did someone else? Was the kinetics teacher, and you could tell she was doing it because she had to. Just her tone, like she had no humor. When we would ask her questions, she would like fumble around, and it was so boring, and it was kinetics first also wasn't like great subject for me at least, but you could just tell she was just so uninterested, and it was just reflected a lot. It just really made me think like I never want to be that type of teacher, even if it's something I don't want to teach, but it's what I need to do. Like at least, you know, that's my job, and I need to, you know, fulfill what I'm supposed to do at a high level. So.
Yeah, I often, when I work with faculty in workshops, tell them that their passion for teaching is often the most valuable thing that they bring to the classroom. Students will forgive you if you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But if you have no energy, no enthusiasm, no concern for the student, it's all over. And that's why day one of the classroom is always so incredibly important, because that's the time to make that first impression and to set the tone. Okay. How about the folks who are joining us remotely? Are there any questions or comments? Maybe we can open up a chat window here and see. Any comments from folks who are joining us remotely? I'm assuming they listed from the bottom here.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. Oh, here we go. In middle school, our algebra teacher would just put on The Simpsons, pause it when Maggie gets, let's say, scanned, and told us that that was our math for the day. Okay, well. Yeah, not a lot of content there. Yeah, really, yes, it really helps that the teacher actually knows what they're talking about, right? Yeah, some respect, yeah. Okay. All right.
How about that? That's an interesting one. We're in college. He was teaching only to fulfill his requirement to do research at the university. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
you know that.
Right.
But that does occur.
Okay. All right. I see a comment that people are having trouble seeing the PowerPoint, so let's move this. Maybe I should just see that. Tell you what, I'm going to, oh no, it's not on my computer. So let's see if I can do it. Can you do a download?
You had it down.
It's downloading.
In the bottom up.
Okay. Is this it?
It's downloading.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about learning styles. And you've probably read about this acronym VARK, which you may recall it stands for, right, visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. And historically, this is the way that they described how people learn. And when people have tried to do empirical studies to show that if you target teaching methods for different types of approaches to learning, they haven't been able to prove that you have better results. I have to say, in almost 30 years of teaching, I've only encountered very few students among tens of thousands who were truly auditory learners, who really could only learn that way. Most of us can learn, our minds are plastic, we can learn in lots of different ways, but many of us have learning preferences. And perhaps you have some learning preferences. How do you like to learn? Visual? Visual? Any folks like to listen?
I like to do it.
You like to do it, yes. The experiential learner, yes. Okay. So we have ways that we like to learn. And so it's good to self-assess and find out how we like to learn so that we can, because if learning is pleasurable, we're more likely to do it, right? Less likely to put it off. Did any of you try the learning styles survey? Did it offer any insights? Let's see if I can actually get the, see if I can get the chat window up here at the same time here. All right, let's move this over. Oops. How about providing materials to learners in different formats? Why might that be a good idea? Everybody's different, right?
Just in real life, you're not going to always be able to say, oh, I want to learn like this. So you have to be able to adapt to different what's going to do in your job or just in general.
Sure, that's a really good thought. It teaches people to be flexible and adaptable. Yeah, govern things in different ways. Also, you know, there can be tremendous nuances. I mean, if you provide something in a video, you're going to have different cues than just something that's straight text. Or if you've got pictures, you're getting different information than you are from just straight text. So providing things in different formats may be giving things giving different kinds of information. Have you ever had the experience where a teacher has handed you a set of PowerPoint slides and said, I want you to learn something just from the PowerPoint slides? It's really hard to learn that way. There's really not a lot there. There's a tremendous amount of information that comes from hearing someone's voice talk about slides or somebody face-to-face explaining those slides. So just giving things in different formats also gives different information. And then, of course, you may have someone who has a disability where they really need material provided in a different way. So we always have to be conscious of that as well. Okay, did anybody watch the TED Talk on mirror neurons? I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, this idea that we're kind of pre-programmed by evolution to learn by watching others. And example that always comes to mind is if you think about learning things, you know, what kinds of things do you learn best reading about? What kind of things do you learn best by watching someone else do them? And then maybe take that to the next step. What about doing it yourself? And the example I like to think about is making a cake. Okay, if you make a cake, reading a recipe, do you know how to make that cake? Well, maybe if you're a pretty good cook, but how about watching somebody else make that cake? You get a lot more information there. You're going to learn a lot more. And then finally, if you make the cake yourself, then you're really going to master that, right? And if it's a really complicated thing you're trying to do, maybe it's not making a cake, maybe it's, you know, I don't know, you know your field better than I do, but you're doing some complex formula to create some master drug, I don't know. That's something you're not going to get from just reading about it, right? So, alrighty, scaffolding. Anybody remember what this idea of scaffolding is? This is just a tremendously important concept.
Yeah, that's the linking the old knowledge to the new and building off of what's already there.
Right, it's creating building blocks, right? So creating cognitive building blocks so that you can connect prior knowledge to new knowledge successfully. So, and this turns out to be one of the hardest things to do as a teacher. And especially after you've taught the same thing many times, because it gets easier and easier to you. So thinking about how to break it down so it's accessible and understandable to learners who are coming at it for the first time turns out to be a hard thing to do. So that's why it's tremendously important. Okay, experiential learning. This is the idea that you're learning by doing. Can you maybe give an example of something you've learned by doing? And then maybe talk about some things that you might teach.
I think a good example, at least for pharmacy, or pharmacy schools compounding, it's very hands-on. They can give you a recipe book or give you all the instructions, but you actually have to physically do it and see how it works. We get that successfully.
So something you're going to have to actually physically do, just reading about it or watching someone else do it, is those help, but they're not quite enough. You really have to at some point do it yourself. I think partly just have the confidence to know that you can do it yourself. Yeah, sure. Any other examples? What are some other things that you might teach someone else? You could imagine yourself teaching someone else in the future, and that would be great to teach in an experiential kind of way.
Taught somebody how to drive a stick shift before.
Okay, that's a tough one. Yeah. And that is not something you can read about in a book or even watch in a video. You know, I mean, you just have to do it, and you have to make all those mistakes. You got to hear those gears grinding. Yep. Yep. Takes me back. Do they even make those things anymore? Do they? I used to love my stick shift. Let me pull the chat window up in case I'm missing anything. Sports, yes. Compounding, yes. Some people prefer images than and text, or some people prefer charts. That's absolutely true. Quantitative information, yes. So thank you for those comments. Okay. It turns out that teaching is most effective when it targets different areas of the brain. That's one reason why experiential learning is effective. The senses turn out to be important. One of the things that I find really fascinating is the research that's being done in the role of hormones in learning. I don't know if you've ever had have you ever had a teacher that absolutely terrified you, that absolutely scared the pants off of you? I used to have this professor, who shall remain nameless, who, when I was in graduate school, he would call on me for my answer, and he would say, "Oh, I would never believe this. Oh, how can you say that? You would embarrass me in front of my colleagues. How could you possibly come up with something like that?" And then a week later, we'd be in class, and he would recap the previous class, and he'd give my answer. And I'd say, wait a minute. You told me that was embarrassing. You'd never believe it." He said, "I decided you were right." And this is his style. This is his way of teaching. So you never knew from one moment to the next whether or not you were going to be, massacred or praised. So you were always sort of in a constant state of fear and anxiety. Do we learn well that way? There may be some people who learn well that way, but it sure isn't me. On the other hand, if you have a teacher who is too easy, the person out in the audience who mentioned watching The Simpsons instead of math class, okay, you're going to learn well in that environment. Not so much. So, what is the right balance there? And so we could talk about that and maybe talk about some examples. Some other things to think about: repetition is important. Practicing something until you know it well. Sometimes students talk to me and they say, I hate, you're going to ask me to give a presentation in your class, and I just can't present. I'm a terrible presenter. I'm afraid to talk in front of people. And the secret to succeeding in presentation is to do it and do it and do it until you know it cold. And because when it becomes a dominant, it's a little bit of psychology here, when it becomes a dominant behavior for you, you will do better in front of an audience. If it's not a dominant behavior where you're unsure of yourself and you're anxious, you will do less well than you were just talking in the mirror. So practicing until it's a dominant behavior is really important. Have you ever had the experience where maybe you were asked to do a presentation and you're walking into a strange room that you'd never been in before, and you were unsure about the equipment, and you were unsure about the lighting and how your voice was going to carry? That adds a lot of stress, right? So it's helpful that when you have to learn how to do something that's important, that you do it in an authentic environment. You get to practice in the place where you have to do the activity. So that turns out to be very helpful. So if you're compounding, you've got the right equipment, you're in the right place, the right kind of setting, even if it's not the actual setting, it's it's the right kind of lab environment. Sure. Okay, so let's have fun with these. Instructor X has students memorize facts and figures and gives multiple choice tests. Instructor Y bases readings and lessons on lab work, and then those concepts are practiced using real world examples. Whose students will remember important concepts 10 years later, and why? And whose students will be more likely to continue their education? I'm going to pull up the chat window so that we can see if we have contributions from our folks who are joining remotely. So what do you think? The first one, just memorizing facts?
Yeah, I think that's that was the second
Why? The second one, okay. All right. Yes, why? Why? Because it's more interesting and applicable, the second teacher. Okay, thank you for those contributions. And yes, and I would say it's the second one. And I think partly it's because you've got the experiential aspect, you've got the lab work. I think it's also because those kinds of activities are going to require more critical thinking. Okay, if you can memorize facts, especially when you're young, memorizing is not so hard, but you can learn it very shallowly. Have you ever had the experience where you cram for the test and then you take the test and you do fine, and then a few days later it's gone, right? Okay, that's not an effective use of your education, right? That's not the kind of teaching and learning. Not at Shenandoah. That's right. I think one of the things that is hard to teach, but if you can teach it, is the best thing you can offer your students is teaching them to be curious and to be lifelong learners, because change is accelerating. The world we live in now is going to be, 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this technology that seems pretty amazing now, and we're going to go, oh, that old stuff, So we have to be adaptable. We have to constantly be retooling and relearning. So thinking about teaching strategies that help our learners stay curious and interested and active in their learning. Okay, let's try another one here. Instructor X yells at her students when they don't pay attention and when they perform poorly. Instructor Y gives lots of extra credit and extends due dates. Instructor Z is firm about deadlines, gives critical feedback, but is also generous with praise and encouragement. Whose students perform the best? Z. Anybody want to argue for the other two?
I have to have a little bit of Y in there.
Yeah, a little bit of Y. What do you like about Y?
I feel like people like getting things. Like, I know, at least in my class, like, if it was just like 1 point for doing a survey, people would be like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. So I think it's always not necessary, but sometimes it might be good to throw that in there. Yeah. Or like bringing, like, people freak out over candy and come to class just for candy.
You have a point, and I think there are some situations where incentivizing learning is appropriate. I have been known to bring in chocolate to reviews for final exams to get people who are tired at the end of the semester to participate, and I also think there are times when extending due deadlines is appropriate. Maybe there's been we have a yes, sorry, I can't do it via Zoom. We haven't got that technology working yet, but maybe in a few years we'll be able to do that as well. Let's see some other comments here. Z, their boundaries and expectations are high, and the teacher challenges the students to rise to the expectations. And absolutely, it is always delightful to see when you set those bars high and students rise to them, and they get so much more out of what it is that you want them to learn. Balance between being strict and encouraging students, getting them to perform at their best, and that is really hard to do, but you're absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head, absolutely. And you do have to, I always find it's that it was what we used to call finding that humane compromise. You want to be strict, but you also, and set those expectations, but you also need to be human and compassionate. People do have things going on in their lives. Sometimes somebody has a personal tragedy, or they've got life challenges, and so you do have to be reasonable. I remember when I was teaching out at Berkeley, I was giving a midterm, and I had 3 students in my office, one right after the other, that their grandmother died and they couldn't take the midterm. And the 4th one came in, and I'm going, really? Turned out, really? So the other 3, I don't think so, but you never know with people. So you do have to be compassionate and sometimes bend over backwards to give somebody a break. On the other hand, setting those standards high and challenging people to try their best. So finding that balance is I think a mark of a good teacher. Okay. Let's see where we are here. Oh, I have to share this story. I was actually sharing this story with our Apple rep earlier today. Alan Kay was one of the bright minds behind early microcomputers, and a lot of the ideas that went into the Apple computer were attributable to him. And he and some of his colleagues were doing research on how people learn, and because they wanted to apply it to how people learn to use computers. And he described some of their studies where they would ask a child to make a perfect circle, and a young child 4 or 5 years old who's still in the physical phase of their development will stand up and then will go a little and turn a little and go a little and turn a little. And you ask the student, how are you making the circle? And the child will say, oh, I'm going and I'm turning, I'm going, I'm turning. And sure, that's a great way to make a circle, right? Perfectly valid. Now you take a slightly older child who is has learned to read and write, 7, 8 years old, and ask that child to make a perfect circle. They will draw a dot on the screen or the board or piece of paper, and then they'll draw equidistant dots around that central point. And you know, if you make enough of those points, you've got a perfect circle, right? You take your basic adult, 18, 20 years old, and you say, make a perfect circle. You know what they say? They can't do it. They evade the question. It has to do with geometry and protractors and compasses and I don't know, pi, I don't know. I need something, I gotta look that up on the internet. I've gotta Google that. You know, now why is it that the little children can do things that have that, they have that creativity, they have that problem solving ability that that adult does not have?
They're immersed in it and they're like, that's what they do on a daily basis, is learn, and they're in that environment where adult, you kind of just get comfortable. You don't have to keep learning, you have to take an active role in your learning.
Yeah. And that's kind of a little sad. It's a little bit sad, right? If you let yourself get too complacent and you lose that curiosity and that creativity, and you think about fast forwarding. I mean, you all are, you know, you've got many years ahead. You don't want to, you know, stop learning and growing too soon, right? So that's a really hard and really interesting thing. How do you instill that in your students? How do you get them back in touch with the creative side of their mind? How do you get them to be to forget about all of those scars from high school geometry and all those bad experiences from math anxiety? And how do you get them to think about problems in a fresh way so that they can learn and problem solve effectively? Can you think about any strategies? How would you approach learners with the kinds of things you might teach in a way to get them to be creative?
I think one thing I noticed with school was we're really scared to be wrong. So if you're called on in class and you don't know the answer, you just automatically go into little free mode. But when we have like group discussions and group participation, it's a smaller group. So even if you're wrong, it's just you and your colleagues. So having small group discussions and small group activities really easier people to be more creative with their answers and thinking outside the box versus just even a huge class of 200 people and a professor. Yeah, so that was one way to do that.
Yeah, you've hit on a really important point. A lot of learning theorists talk about the importance of creating a learning community in your group. And you may have noticed that in this group, I mean, this class is just starting, but already we've got ideas free flowing. People are comfortable. We're you know, coming up with ideas and bouncing them off each other. We're not in an environment where people are competitive and you're anxious about speaking up. So making your learners comfortable and encouraging them to help each other turns out to be incredibly important. Some learners work just fine on their own and they don't need help from other people, but most of us do better when we're in a learning community environment where we have the support of our peers. And Dr. Johnson, Dr. Pierce will tell you that that when you are working on faculty committees that work well are those where we bounce ideas freely off each other in that kind of approach. Okay, I'm going to pull up the chat window here just to make sure I haven't missed anything from our participants here. Okay. All right, let's move on. Oh, here we go. How do you adjust the expectations between adult and child? The child circle might not be perfect, where the adult thinks there might be an expectation of perfect circle. Yes, and you're absolutely right. And that probably does have a lot to do with it because as adults, our standards are higher, and that's true. It was a little bit of an unfair question. That's true. But it also, I think, speaks to the fact that we put too much pressure on learners so we don't let them be creative, then we may not get to answers that are perfectly valid. Because it turns out that if you take that going and turning and use that as a computer algorithm, that's a perfectly valid method of making a circle, as is the equidistant dot. So, but that's a perfectly fair point. You're absolutely right. Okay. All right. So yeah, one thing about being a good teacher is understand, and Dr. Schultz touched on this a little bit, is thinking about your learners. And you know, it used to be when I was in grade school that we took IQ tests, and that was we were just sort of ranked by that. And that's what we were. We were either, you know, here or we were here. And now people believe that there are lots of different types of intelligences, that we all have different aptitudes. And one of the things that's been interesting for me working in different disciplines is seeing that when I was teaching IT, very different kinds of learners than when I was teaching computer science. And then when I was teaching biology, totally, again, people who look at the world in a totally different way. So understanding the aptitudes of your learners, and even within those group of learners, what their individual aptitudes are, can help you bring out the best in them. Some people are more creative visually, artistically. Other people might be more articulate verbally. You know, what are those learners' strengths, and what do those learners need to work on to improve? Anybody ever try a Myers-Briggs test? Yeah? And what did you think about it? Pretty what?
Accurate.
Was it accurate? You know, what I found the value of it for me was, you know, I always thought that everybody should be just like me, right? You know, and that my way of thinking and doing things was the right way. And then I realized, you know, other people have perfectly valid ways of looking at the world that work for them, you know, and helping, you know, giving other people, giving insight into others' approaches to work in particular, I think can be very helpful, especially if you're working in teams and trying to work together. All right. Let's let me pull the chat here. Okay. All right. Mentioned earlier that it's really important to start off any lesson or class with an upbeat, positive tone to set the right tone for the class. Do you all have any thoughts about how you might approach learners you're meeting for the first time? What would you do? Maybe you can think back to examples from your own classes of either good things or bad things that you might do when you're meeting students for the first time.
One of our professors started every class with an icebreaker. And 2 or 3 little funny jokes or he thought was funny jokes on the board. And even if they were not funny, just the fact that he put in the thought and the effort to, we would all laugh just to make it feel better. But that was a good way, at least, to just release some tension, especially since this class was like right after lunch. So.
Yes, and you've learned a very important point, which is laughing at the professor's jokes, whether they're funny or not. It's really important. Yeah. Anything else?
I had an MBA professor that he was a former lawyer, and he taught labor relations and business law. And the first time we came into his classroom, it was a summer class. It was Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was tired. We walk in there and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops. And for the first probably good 5 minutes of class, he just played YouTube videos. And there was like music blaring and everything. And we questioned whether we were in the right spot at first, but it just livened everybody up. And good way to start.
So it got everybody relaxed and woke you up, gave you time to wake up a little bit. Yeah. I'm having a flashback to a professor I once worked with, and he was totally disorganized. And he used to start every class with current events. And I knew it was because it gave him time to figure out what he was going to do for that class that day. But it worked for his students. His students loved him because he thought that it helped them to think about the relevance of what they were doing, and again, it got them relaxed and a good frame of mind for working. Yeah. Have you ever been in a class where the first thing the professor did was very first class was to go over the syllabus, read it in agonizing detail, and read you all the rules and every bad thing that was going to happen to you if you didn't follow those rules? Okay. Yeah. Really hard to get the audience back after you do that. Yeah, it's kind of the kiss of death. Yeah. Okay. We'll just pause and check with our.
Yeah, just came to mind, Anne. But one of the things these, I don't know if this is the perfect time to mention this, but even the title of like a lecture or something like that, I've kind of, through the hard way figured it out over the years, is that even titles can be catchy. So if you're doing like a CE presentation or something like that, to a group, pharmacists, in the community or whatever, something like that I think can really catch people's attention as well. So, which is kind of that almost like first impression kind of thing. And,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, this makes me want to look further.
Absolutely.
Stuff, so.
Yeah, it's like writing that first catch line, in your paper that you want to catch the reader's attention. The same thing is true of titling your lectures. Absolutely. I remember I was taking an ancient history class years ago, and the professor used to hand us, stacks of copies that we had to go through, text we had to go through to read. And every now and then he'd just throw in a whimsical picture. You'd get down 10 pages and there'd be a hedgehog. You're what? But sometimes just, doing those little things to liven things up can make all the difference. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry?
Oh, the professor brought in a withdrawal slip to the first class.
Oh yeah, that's a great way to tell you to welcome your students, right?
All slips. Oh wow.
Okay, and I think you need to start with enthusiasm and connect with the students. Humor is a good way to connect. An introduction to who the professor is, both professionally and personally, absolutely. And getting the students to introduce themselves. And I think you all did that earlier. Creating that learning community. One thing I like to do. We've got so many wonderful collaborative tools now. If I'd had all of your email addresses, I would have done this. But one thing I like to do with classes is to open up a Google presentation and share it with the class so they can all have access to the same thing, and then have them make a slide that represents and introduces themselves. And that way you get maybe a picture and a little introduction to help you learn everybody's names and get to know people. But that can be helpful too. So yeah, enthusiasm is just absolutely key. We talked about learning communities. We talked about learning in groups, and just thinking a little bit more about collaborative tools. I don't know if you're likely to be teaching in situations where technology would be helpful for you to support this, but there are all kinds of collaborative tools available now. Can you think of some that maybe you've used where you can share information online?
I use Pull Everywhere, like doing it in presentation, which is like, it's free, it's really easy. Well, depending on the people you have, but it's pretty reliable. People can test them,
Yeah, Poll Everywhere for doing polling, getting audience feedback. Socrative is another one that works a very similar kind of way. There are tools like Yammer. Have you seen Yammer? It has a sort of Facebook-like interface, but just private. So you can create, a class or a group of learners, and you can post documents and have discussions, and you can like things or not like things. And anyway, lots of Yammer.com, free. We like free. So anyway, just lots of things to help you stay in touch with your learners and communicate even if you're at a distance. Okay, interesting idea. We're living in a globalized world. How does culture influence learning? Any thoughts on that?
Greatly. I'm Nigerian by origin.
Uh-huh.
With us, we're very I gave you notes, you memorize it, you regurgitate it back, hopefully you pass my class. It's very, very strict. We're very good at things like math and biology just because it was easy to just regurgitate information. But when it comes to like arts and things where you have to be independent or you create your own kind of view, things are a bit harder for us students. So transitioning here to coming to college in the United States where everything is kind of laid back and it's more like supportive and we didn't have anything like PowerPoint notes, lecture notes, free text with your hand. So I found it amazing like to have that much support with notes and just having small group discussions and a lot of help from the professor. So I think that really made me understand that people learn differently from their cultures.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I bet students who've been in your classes that you've worked with have probably learned a lot from you because they probably find it harder to memorize because they haven't had to stress that particular skill as to the extent that you have. So I really love it when we have classes with students from around the world because I think it just enriches the learning experience for all of us because we can all benefit from others' cultures. Any other thoughts? Let me pull up the chat window in case I'm missing anybody, and then I'll share. Okay, expectations, accountability, and responsibility changes with culture and generations. Yeah, that's really true. And yes, I'm glad you mentioned generations because it's really true that the classroom and the nature of the classroom has changed quite a bit from the time when I was in college. This whole group learning thing, we didn't do it when I was in college, and now group learning is done a lot. So there have also been changes across generations. So thank you for that. Some years ago, I started experimenting with doing some classes online and doing blended learning before I knew what blended learning was. I just thought it would work for my students, so I thought I'd give it a try. And I had them post answers to questions on a bulletin board. This was back before, when bulletin boards were new, and this was a new idea, back around the dawn of time. And I was teaching information technology at the time, and a lot of international students, but predominantly male. Okay, 3/4 of the class were men, and 1/4 were women. And a lot of the women were from countries where they were not encouraged to speak up in class. And being in a class where you've got 3/4 men, they were definitely not speaking up in class. Okay, so had really difficult time getting the women students engaged. But when we did the online discussions and I required them to participate, suddenly I'm hearing their voices. And suddenly the whole tone of the class changed. I mean, it was amazing. Just helping them find their voice, having the technology help them find their voice, just changed the whole character of the entire class. And so it was really an eye-opener for me to realize that the classroom dynamics, which were happening for a number of reasons, not just culture, but really made a huge difference in the tone of the class. So it's always something to be aware of. Any other thoughts? Okay. How are we doing for time, by the way?
7:25, so we're good.
Okay. How much more?
We end at 8. So,
you end at 8, and is there?
And we have a.
Oh, okay.
Just a few things.
All right. So maybe I should wrap it up. Or you? How much time do you need?
We probably finish.
Yeah, so maybe like 10, 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just didn't want to run over my time. All right, did you have a chance to see the selective attention video? You may have seen it before. So did you see the gorilla? You did, you saw the gorilla. Let's see if we have some contributions from the chat folks. Did you see the gorilla folks out there? Anyway, I was actually having this, when I was chatting with our Apple rep earlier today, we also talked about this aspect of teaching and learning as well, that, we're living in a world where we are just surrounded by distractions all the time. I find it increasingly difficult to get away from my email for more than an hour. My hands start to shake. I just, and for you, it's maybe the phone, being in a different generation, right? If you haven't checked your phone, you feel like, yeah, something's wrong, right? Yep. And it does make it difficult for us to concentrate on things. We don't have the same level of focus, I think, that we used to. And I find that it takes its toll on reading in particular. Do you have this sense that it's hard to focus on reading? And so one of the things that a lot of my colleagues and I are doing is brainstorming on how to help learners focus on reading. Because there's, of course, lots of good stuff in reading. It's a tremendously valuable skill. But how do we force ourselves to focus and still make it a pleasurable, enjoyable learning exercise? And I don't have an answer for this. I'm just throwing it out there as a challenge. But if anybody has the answer, you stand to make a lot of money if you can patent it and market it, because we live in a world with increasing challenges.
That becomes a challenge in the classroom, as you know, with so many competing technologies and everything, cell phones, emails and whatnot. And, at some point we'll maybe discuss that a little bit more, but how do you deal with all those distractions in the classroom? Mm-hmm. When you want your learners to concentrate on what you're talking about, you know that they're multitasking, at their seat.
Right.
And so how do you best deal with that?
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So I feel that, you have to do your part as a teacher, but also there's a sense of responsibility on the student.
Mm-hmm.
I taught intro chemistry for college students, and it was to a point where I would do as much as I could, but sometimes the student has a responsibility. I can't hold their hand and force them to listen. So how would you deal with that? Because I think there's a line, you can only do so much, and it's their time, it's their money, and they have to make the decision if they want to learn. You can't force someone.
Well, I have some ideas. One is you can, first of all, it's not just about them and their choice, because what they're doing is distracting others. Okay. So you can present it that way. Okay. And it is a rule I put in my syllabus, actually. I do say, we're in the classroom, please use your computer, your cell phone, your iPad as a learning tool. If you have to take a personal call, something's going on and you really, really need to check an email or check a text, excuse yourself, go outside, but please show respect for others and don't distract others in the classroom. And I find that this generally works. Every now and then I'll have a student who just doesn't pay it. I was teaching the freshman seminar about a year ago, and there was one student who was really bad about texting, and I finally said, she was sitting right in the front row, so everybody was watching her, right? And so one day I just called her out and said, could you take that outside, because everybody's watching you, text. And she said, but it's my mother.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, never mind. You go there.
Tell her hi.
So anyway, but yeah, it's a problem.
It can be a challenge, Shia. I agree with Ann. I think if it becomes a distraction to others, which oftentimes it can be. I'm always amazed when you go in the back of the classroom. If you're just kind of peeping through the window in the classroom, you guys think we never did this, but just to see the students that are on Facebook and stuff like that, and you're saying to yourself, there is a part of me that says, that's their deal. If they want to do that, that's fine. If they're not disrupting. So I'm somewhat that way, but I also think that they're not getting the most out of it, and they're only hurting themselves. And, but maybe we as the teachers aren't engaging them enough. Maybe some of it's on us too. That we're not engaging them enough to keep their interest in what we're talking about. And some of this, I think, comes into where, we'll talk more about we'll have something like team-based learning, some of that, in which we're starting to do some here, and more active learning strategies, which we encourage everyone to do a lot more of that in your lectures. But I think those things can help a little can help, you know. Just think about, you know, some of the lectures that you guys were to. Where were you probably the most engaged?
We did team-based learning, and you couldn't go on your computer because you're actively talking and doing a case with people, and that made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, again, there's a fine line. My wife tells this story one time of a student that was actually, she teaches here at the school as well, and the student was actually playing solitaire on the computer. And she walked by him a couple of times, and in broad daylight, you know, she could see what they were doing, you know, and the other students could as well, you know, and stuff. And so all it took is that Gretchen just stopped and just said, "Are you winning?" You know? And that's all it took. You know, it's kind of like you know, sometimes if it is distracting to others and stuff, and you know, it's just irking you, sometimes you have to just politely, you know, professionally, just call them out. You know, in a good way, you know, and but they know what you mean, you know, and more than likely will stop. But that can happen too. So, you know, it's more classroom distractions and things like that. So.
That's why like there are a lot of different philosophies from faculty. Like if you pull 10 faculty, you get 10 different answers in terms of just having been at an academic meeting this past summer. Things like this come up because technology and distractions in the classroom are just, we're all in the same boat dealing with it. But some faculty members really don't care. Like it's the student's responsibility. If they pay attention, great. If they don't, then they can re-listen to it later, study on their own or whatever. All the way to the faculty that get so offended and upset they want like a policy in place. And if I catch them on Facebook, they are failing my class. Like you'll see the whole spectrum of it. And in this one meeting I was in, they were really it was kind of funny. They're like, we know, I don't realize why students don't recognize that you don't normally stare at your lap and giggle. So we know when you're like texting or emailing or whatever. So you're going to hear a lot of different philosophies. You just have to be comfortable in your own classroom with how things are going.
That's really good advice. And another thing that I've seen done successfully is getting students to reflect on their own ability to concentrate. So at the beginning of the class, having them set their own professional development goals. So beyond the course, what the course or the lesson is supposed to teach, you know, I want to be a better writer, I want to be a better presenter, I want to be spend less time addicted to Facebook, I want to be able to focus more, I want to be able to read better. And so you can suggest some of these things, and then later in the class, ask them to self-assess. Don't do it for grade, but just to self-assess, are they making progress towards these goals? And so get people to think about, because it has to come from within anyway. I mean, ultimately it's, you know, the learner, whether or not they're going to take responsibility or going to make the effort to get themselves away from their devices. So self-reflection can be a very powerful teaching tool.
Kind of like that opposite of everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, but don't always write someone off who's on Facebook or doing something else, because it might not be their style of learning. I know for me, trying to keep up in a lecture was exhausting and just depressing to myself. I would be so good for the first 10 minutes, and then I couldn't type fast enough as what I wanted to write and listen to, and then all of a sudden I have no clue where she is or what she's saying, or the professor, and I'm just like, seriously, again, Erin, like you can't type 5 words, like, or she'd say something really important, and I'm like, oh, I need to know this. What did you say? And so like for me, I think it was a little more anxiety of trying to know I had to keep up. If you missed it, it was fun. But like when I went back and was like, listen to a lecture, okay, if I missed it, I could just record it. And it wasn't as like anxiety driven for me. So oftentimes, like, yes, I would be one of those kids, but it wasn't that I wasn't engaged in what like the professor was saying. I couldn't keep up. And so, you know, so they're not all bad.
Well, and you raised another good point that it's important to take breaks and give people mental breaks. You know, I talked about the professor who had the hedgehog in the middle of the stack of papers. You know, things like that to kind of break things up a little bit, to give people a little bit, because it is exhausting to focus too much and, you know, intensely over hours and hours. I used to teach 3-hour classes when I taught at George Mason. 3 hours? I mean, really? You know, that's just.
Yeah.
intense. So
It's interesting. She
Interesting
mentioned the
comments.
10-minute mark too.
These last
About
comments.
cognitive science
yeah.
says you've got 8 to 12 minutes before you lose. Interesting. She said the 10-minute mark.
Yep.
Pretty good rule for where most people veer off.
Just losing.
Without a reset. I mean, that's the way it is.
That's edutainment idea.
How does this feed into the edutainment idea that education should be entertaining enough to hold attention? And there's been some interesting work lately on videos, because it's becoming really trendy to teach with videos, and they're actually finding that videos are not the best way to learn a lot of times, because when learning is purely entertainment, we don't do the deep learning thing. We don't work at it, and it's because we just watch it superficially. Think about if you're watching something just for fun. You don't pay. You're not as focused as if you're trying to actively learn it. So I think video can be a good way to reinforce learning or to demonstrate things, but as edutainment by itself, I'm not sure is completely successful. The best learning tends to be when people are a little bit stressed, not freaked out, but a little bit challenged, shall we say. So that's a great question. And someone else comments, I think peer teaching is a good idea, and absolutely. Sometimes this can be, of course, you can have 2 professors in the same class, 2 or more professors, or you can have students in the class teaching each other, and that's great too. Both strategies can be incredibly helpful. I had probably the best teaching experience I've ever had this past spring. I taught a course in distance education, and it just so happened that 2 of the students were 2 other professors, and both very senior professors. And then there were 3 graduate students, and one was Middle Eastern, one was African American, and one was Hispanic. So it was just this incredibly diverse classroom. And so there were 3 professors, 3 graduate students, and we just had the greatest learning community going. And this group is still, even though the class is long over, we still talk online, and we still share references. I saw this great article, and we still, that learning community is still going. So creating that environment where people can learn from each other. And one of the other faculty who was in the class said it in a really nice way. He said, when you have an environment where we're all learning from each other, there are so many more opportunities to teach and to learn, because everybody's a teacher as well as just a learner. So I just thought that was a really great way to think about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I just the size of the classrooms in the large lecture halls. I feel like that just brings in a huge variable, I guess, because it's just so much more comfortable sitting here in a class, in a classroom, more relaxed, but kind of forced out of being in a lecture hall. So I just wanted to get your opinion, experiences in both environments.
You are so right. The very first class I ever taught professionally, I was at Berkeley, and it was a class of 300 students, and it met Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 to 5 o'clock, and it was in this giant lecture hall with no windows, and we had these big chalkboards with big railroad chalk that we used so that people could see back in the back, and I got too much chalk dust up in my nose, and I sneezed. Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock. You've never seen so many people jump in your entire life. Sound asleep they were, and yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean,
there's not really good strategies to overcome that. I feel like.
No, you're absolutely right. That the bigger the class, the harder it is. I think there's definitely some kind of exponential curve, and so the kind of professors who can do those TED Talks that keep classes of 100 students engaged, those are real masters, because that is not an easy thing to do.
To add to that, one of our professors just calling you based on what code you're writing books. So our classroom was 200 people in our class, and she's like, you pinch in the back. So because she could call anybody at any time, we all had to kind of pay attention, because she would really, she's humorous, but she would chew you out if you're not paying attention. And she'll tell you this is a serious topic, pay attention, or you guys can drift off into a la land for this lecture, whatever you want to. So for this serious lecture, she would just chew you out if you're not paying attention, and it was random. Or she would have a list of all the students and call you at random from her list, and then mark you correct or mark you wrong. things like that kind of engage the entire class versus just a smaller class.
There are some
Good incentive.
there are some strategies for handling that situation. There's something called the fishbowl exercise, where you take a subset of the students in the class, and then you have them do an activity or an exercise in front of the class. So it's kind of like peer teaching, but you can't really do peer teaching if you've got a class of 100. But if you have a subset of the students doing the activity and the other students can watch, you get some of those same benefits. So there are things like that.
Sorry, I have a question on the chat.
Oh, a question on the chat. Thank you. How do you adjust for teaching, engaging students from various groups of people? Not every class is a silo of early learners or adult learners. Even students who have taken breaks in learning and those going through the motions of the next step. And that's an excellent question, and it's something that teachers struggle with all the time. You have people who are different life stages. You have people who may have to come from different backgrounds, at different levels of preparation. And what you'll find with older learners is that they're frequently they feel very disadvantaged because they think, oh, I don't remember as well as I used to. I don't learn as quickly as I used to. And whereas the younger students think that they're at a disadvantage because the older student has more experience. And in fact, they all have advantages and disadvantages, you know. And I think the secret where I've seen faculty be successful with these kinds of situations is where you learn to draw, you figure out how to draw on people's strengths, and you help them leverage those strengths. At the same time, you find ways to help them self-identify and build and strengthen their own weaknesses. And so again, if you can create that learning environment, that learning community, so that people are not in constant fear of competition, then you can work with it. It helps. I mean, it certainly, there are limits, obviously. If you've got a particular learner who just really is not prepared for a particular class, there may not be a lot you can do within the context of the class. You may need to find some remediation for that particular learner. So there are limits. But overall, I'm having a flashback to a class I taught some years ago where a student I will always remember, she was in it was one of these IT classes, and she was the only woman in this class, but she was an Army sergeant. She was retired. She was 50 years old, and she was not going to take no lip from these young guys. She was going to put them right in their place, and she got everything she wanted out of that class. And she needed no help from me, believe me. In fact, sometimes it was great. I could use her help because when the students weren't paying attention, she would call them out and she would make sure they were sitting up and paying attention. So it was great. But seriously, you do raise a really good question. That when you have learners who are coming from different backgrounds, you have to take those dynamics into consideration. Classroom dynamics are tremendously important. Letting your students know that you're sensitive to those dynamics. When I was teaching this class I talked about last spring, where I had the 3 graduate students and the 2 other faculty, I thought, boy, those graduate students might feel a little intimidated, where they've got, 2 other students in the class are faculty, they're senior faculty. And so I thought, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to make them comfortable? And so I thought, well, I think I'm just going to flat out say it. This is an unusual class. We have 2 of our students who are faculty. And you can't be expected to have the same experience somebody who's been teaching for 20 or 30 years. And so, I'm not going to grade you all the same. That's just the way it is. and instantly, I think the atmosphere changed. I think people did feel at ease. And I think dealing with it, confronting it directly was about, just the only way to confront it. So, but classroom dynamics are hugely important. So great question. Thank you for that. Alrighty, let's see where we are here. Maybe we should try to wrap this up. I want to save some time for what you need to finish up. But just thinking about teaching as a process. It's not like you do it once and you're done. You teach the class one time, you're finished. It's always improving. You're always thinking about the next time, what you could do better. Whether your learners succeeded and whether or not there are things that you can improve on. So assessing your own progress in each class is important. And have you thought about what your own learning goals are for this class and how you might self-assess whether or not you're reaching those goals?
Well, one of the things that we're actually going to have to do is they actually, I think Amber, you might go over this a little bit, but they have to write a self-reflection about why they really wanted to take this program. And then also their future kind of career goals and their goals and that they want to get out of this program. And so they're actually going to be required to do that and before our next time we get together. And so they need to be working on that. So it's important.
That's a perfect thing. Okay, then just to wrap up, I thought we'd just do a little fun thing to a little quick exercise to kind of summarize some of the important points of all of this. I just happened to read this article from the Smithsonian, and as I was reading it, and they were talking about how they were training this giant panda, I realized that these are the same things we do with our students. And so let's maybe just have a look here. And I'm assuming it's pronounced Bao Bao. Anybody know differently, please correct me. But Bao Bao is participating in regular training sessions with her keepers, but as always, only on her own terms. On the days when she's focused, we make real progress. We build on old behaviors, so new knowledge to prior knowledge. She has mastered and learned new behaviors. One behavior we've been continually building on is targeting. And that's usually where they have a stick with some kind of ball on the end that they teach the animal to follow. Bao Bao has been touching her nose to the target since she was about 5 months old. Now she can follow the target partway inside from the outdoor yard. Interestingly, she rarely has to be carried into the patio by her keepers anymore, so she's learned that. We just need to find a way to motivate her to do the reverse in the afternoons when she doesn't want to come in. Over the years, we have trained our giant pandas to do amazing husbandry behaviors, and Bao Bao certainly has as much potential as anyone in her family, but we must capture and consistently be able to hold her interest in training. So, same principles. We have to motivate learners. We've got to keep them engaged. We've got to keep them focused. We're all mammals. Someone comes right down. Right down to. Okay. So let me just pull up the chat here, see if we have any final questions or remarks from our remote participants. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay.
Anybody have any final questions for Dr. Martin, either remotely or here?
Well, thank you very much. I'm on email, happy to answer any questions you have at any time, and I wish you every success in this wonderful program. You're going to have a great time, and I hope I get a chance to come and visit with you again. So, thank you all. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
In our course page.
My husband has held it.
This is what they're saying. We need to do down.
I'm used to having my little scroll bar. Well, that works too.
9 years old.
All right, guys. So I'm just gonna go over briefly with everyone a little bit orientation to Canvas and some of the documents that you guys are going to be using. I will keep it brief, kind of hit the highlights, and so that just kind of get you guys prepped for the next month, what you need to know. And we can go over some more details at our next meeting in September as well. But the kind of first thing I wanted to just show you guys is on Canvas. Hopefully you've all been on here, so you're a little bit familiar with it. We did do some updating today with some documents that are important for you guys to review and have access to. So when you're on the main Canvas page, if you scroll down just a little bit past the introductory paragraph, we now have this section called Documents. And there are two sections. There's one for the SU affiliated residents. That's pretty much the people who are in this room as well as the Reston residents. And then the second grouping is the remote site. So everyone that is remoting in tonight as well. So there's very slight differences between the documents, but just utilize the ones that pertain to you so you make sure you have the most accurate information. The first thing that you'll want to look at after tonight is the program overview document. Some of you may have seen a version of this, but this is now the most updated version that is accurate for this cycle of the teaching program. And so I'm just going to click into the one here. Basically what this is a pretty long document that describes all of the required pieces of the teaching program. It kind of highlights the description of all the activities, things you're required to do. It also shows one of our lecture planning forms and is a really good resource for you to review. And so what we would like for you all to do is to have read through this over the next few weeks just to make sure everyone is fully clear on the requirements of the teaching program. And so if you were to scroll to the very end of this document, there's actually a signature page to acknowledge that you reviewed it and you understand the requirements of the program. And so after you've reviewed this document, and it basically goes through the lectures, the small group facilitation, the precepting, the pedagogy series, that kind of highlights all of those things that come into play for the program. But you read it, you sign it, you actually are going to submit it as an assignment. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with Canvas, but it's actually not just to provide you with information, you can actually submit things to us as well. And so this is something we're going to be trialing out new this year, where all of your different components of the teaching program, we're going to create an assignment for it. And then as you complete those pieces, you're going to be uploading them into Canvas. So this is kind of your first trial with just one single page with your signature that you have to upload in there as an assignment. So it's kind of like a trial, but I'll show you where this is. So if you click under assignments in our course, you will see multiple assignments come in here as we build all of them in here, but I'm just going to show you the signed document. So the third assignment here is the teaching program signed acknowledgement. And if it's a complex assignment, there will be a description here. It did assign a point. You're not graded on these things. It's just more of like a checklist to make sure we're seeing that you're getting everything completed for the program. And so it tells you the due date, so we're asking you to do it by September 2nd, so you have about 2 weeks, when it becomes available, and when the assignment would close. You need to have it up there beforehand if you run a little bit late. And so there'll be a place where you can click to submit the assignments. I think it's not showing it for me since I'm more in the teacher view, but you'll go into this, submit, and you'll be able to upload either a Word document or PDF, depending on how you scan in or do it electronically. And then we'll end up being able to see a check mark that you've completed that assignment. So as I said, right now there's only 4 assignments in here, but we will eventually be building, say, for your lecture objectives, your slide set, your test questions, your self-reflection, all those different pieces that you're going to have to complete for each activity will end up becoming an assignment for you to upload. So it'll help us make sure you're keeping on track. Hopefully it'll also keep you on track to make sure if I see, oh, there's an assignment coming up or something that I haven't even thought about yet, I better get on track to do that. It also will provide you a single place with all of your electronic documents that will help you when putting together your e-portfolio, which Richard is going to just briefly talk about a little bit. So it's going to have multiple benefits, hopefully, for everyone. So that's one thing. Please review that document, sign it, and get that uploaded in the next 2 weeks. The other documents that I want to show you guys are our forms that we have. And what these forms are, and for our on-site residents, these are the colored forms that we passed out earlier. What these are designed to do is to help keep you organized in planning for your lecture, your small group facilitations, and then also for precepting. So you see for each topic for the lecture, small group facilitation, and precepting, there's a planning form and then also an evaluation form. So this should be all of the documentation you need to properly prepare for all of these activities. And then also the evaluation forms that you're going to need for your mentors to fill out, and also for you to fill out as self-reflections wherever you see that noted in that overview document. They're all here for you, so one localized place. Also, as part of these documents, it does give you kind of some tips. What do I need to keep for my e-portfolio? So you're clear in terms of what you'll need to upload and what is just for your purposes. So I'm going to open the lecture planning form to show this as an example, as your lectures are really the next thing you guys need to be thinking about. Now that we have the program off and running, the lecture for the fall or for the first half of the year is really what you want to make sure you're getting a topic picked out, you have a mentor assigned to you so that you can start properly preparing for that. So if you look through the lecture planning form, the top section asks for some basic information such as the date, what topic you're doing, and kind of the general content you want to cover, where and when it's going to be held, how many participants or students will you be lecturing to, and then asks about different mentors. So there's a lot actually included in here because our on-site residents have several people that they need to keep in the loop and email their materials to. But it may include a course coordinator or faculty mentor, depending if you're teaching at a university, as well as your residency program director should be included on everything. And then whoever your assigned mentor is, either at your remote sites at your hospitals, the different mentors they've identified, or here, Mark or myself, that'll be working with you. The bottom section is more of your timeline to kind of keep you on track and plan ahead to make sure that you don't get close to the time of your lecture and kind of are behind. So basically with the lectures, we recommend at least a month out is where you've been seriously working on your lecture. So we do ask that a first draft of your lecture materials be ready by 4 weeks prior to your lecture date. The final draft within 3 weeks, as well as your assessment or test questions. And then a practice session starts 1 to 2 weeks before. We usually try to go about 2 weeks ahead of time. So if we need to schedule an additional session, it gives us a little time to play with. And then it also even includes in here things like the survey, the recording, and the evaluations and reflections that need to be done. So it kind of keeps you on point with everything you need to get ready and also the recommended timeline to follow. In terms of the top section, the drafts, the assessment questions, the practice sessions, those are relatively self-explanatory. As a lecture experience, you must create objectives, you must create the content or the slide set that is going to go along with your topic, and assessment questions. So some settings, the participants or students you teach to will be actually taking those assessment questions in an exam. Even if it's a setting where you won't be giving a formal exam to those participants, you still should go through the process of creating the assessment questions to go along with them. In gray there is the survey and the recording. For our on-site residents, we do schedule that and take care of it to make sure there's a recording that you're able to watch later of yourself to complete your self-reflection, as well as surveying the students to get their feedback on your presentation. For the off-sites, that's something that you'll need to talk with your residency program directors about how you're going to go about getting that piece done, about setting up a recording, or maybe you'll use your laptop or iPad to record your lecture, as well as some way to survey the participants who were there for your lecture, whether it's electronic or a paper survey that you hand out, but so that you can get feedback from those that you lectured to. The last two things are the reflections or the feedback. You always should have at least one mentor or content expert attending your lecture to provide you feedback. And then you also need to complete an evaluation of yourself after you've watched the recording so that you can do that self-reflection piece and speak to your mentor about what you thought went well and what could use improvement on. And then at the second page of this document, like I had mentioned, it does kind of give you an overview of what to keep for your e-portfolio. Now I just went through the lecture planning form because that's kind of what should come first up for you guys to do this fall. There's also a version of this for your small group facilitations and also for precepting to give you an idea of what pieces are required, what timeline you should be following. And we can get into those more next time. But at this point, what questions do you all have about planning for your activities and evaluations?
So I have a question. The lecture planning form says due September 15th.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't fill in the bottom part where it has to, the completed dates or the due dates. That's later trying to complete that? Or?
So actually for everyone on site here, Mark and I will be meeting with you after this, because at least for us, we know the dates of all of your lectures for the fall. So if you don't already know them, we'll be telling you them tonight. But yes, for everyone, including the offsites, why we ask for it by September 15th is because at that point, you really should have an idea about what topic you're doing and have that date set in place. So that way you're either lecturing in October or November. So we're trying to avoid any kind of last minute issues that come up. So why we have planning forms is because planning ahead of time, scheduling is going to help set you up for success. That's what we found. So the earlier everyone can find a topic, find a location, and set a date, the better. So we'd like to plan early. Yes.
What is CPD and RPD?
So the RPD is the residency program director, so at your site, and the CPD is the certificate program director. So that's Mark or myself. So for the offsites, that doesn't really apply. I mean, we will be reviewing your materials, but not on a regular daily basis. For our on-sites, that's who that applies to, depending on who ended up being your mentor. One last thing.
We will have something, Amber, you and I can talk about a little bit as well, but some news that I heard about today, but we'll have for our offsites. So the offsites, guys, everyone should have a mentor for the program, you know, and then also you may have a content expert for the lectures that you give. So oftentimes, you know, your mentor may be a residency program director, and then, you know, you may have a content expert for your lecture, but we are going to assign one of us at the school, along with another faculty member, that will be kind of your contacts here at the school. Your mentors are really still on site, but you're going to have questions that come up from time to time and things like that. And so we will email everyone kind of who your contact here is at the school so that you can bounce ideas off of us and whatnot. And we'll be the ones also kind of looking over some of your materials that you've linked on Canvas as well. So, okay.
Okay, so last thing for now. So as you're preparing for our next meeting in September, you of course want to look ahead at the materials that we post, and those will get posted here in a few weeks so that you're prepared for that. Make sure you review the document and upload your signed acknowledgement, as well as everyone make sure that you're planning for and starting to schedule out dates for your lecture back. The one last thing that you need to be thinking about is the initial self-reflection, which Mark had mentioned a little bit earlier. So that also is in here as one of those 4 assignments that are already built into Canvas. And so the initial self-reflection, like Mark had mentioned, it's basically your opinions in terms of why you're interested in teaching, why you're taking the program, what goals you would like to get out of it, any strengths you feel like you're bringing into the program or areas that you would like to focus on to improve upon. So usually paragraph to a page. It doesn't have to be excessively long, but please work on that. And then the due date in here is the day of our next meeting. So make sure that you're writing that and getting that uploaded over the next month as well into Canvas.
And a little bit more information on that. When you go to these documents that Amber is going over, it's actually under pedagogy seminars. You'll see there's a section within there. Pull that up, Amber, a second, and we'll show them exactly where it is. You know, either one, either the on-site or the remote, it doesn't matter. But we'll show you guys where the description of that self-reflection is. So go to page 3. Okay, right there at the top there, it says pedagogy seminars. It talks about, there it is.
Oh, sorry.
The resident must complete a self-reflection, including but not limited to your desire to complete the program, future career goals, and goals in the program during the residency year. So that's where it kind of gives you a description of that. Again, just kind of a paragraph or no more than a page about that. That will eventually then go also in your portfolio. So.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, we'll touch base again at the next session in September. And also I'll probably focus a little bit more on your small group facilitation, touching base about the requirements and options for that as well. So we'll focus on that at our next meeting.
So anybody have any questions, either here in Manchester or remotely at our offsites? Richard, check the chat. Make sure that nobody is shouting us a question. Here we go.
Do we receive an email with everyone's topic?
Do we receive an email with everyone's?
Does everybody know what everybody's topic is? Or will they?
Are you talking about the lectures themselves, the lecture topics? Because that's really kind of done for the remotes. That's kind of done at your sites. That's working with your mentor at your site. You know, residency program director.
We could probably aggregate that information using a Google form or something. Have everybody submit them.
I'm not sure that, I don't know that we necessarily need to, though.
No, we don't need to send out an email with everyone's topic, but if you have a question if the topic is appropriate or a setting is appropriate, please email us. But in terms of if you're an offsite and you have not gotten any suggestions for topics, then you need to seek out your residency program director and or whichever mentor has been assigned to you at this point to start discussing what options they have for residents at your site. Because all of the lecture and small group facilitations, if you're a remote site, will be handled by your on-site mentor and residency program director.
Yeah. And actually in the document, when you look in the documents that Amber just went over, the didactic experiences, it actually gives you some guidance in there in terms of didactic experiences that you may want to take a look at. And so it talks a little bit about the different types of topics that are acceptable and things like that. So why don't you take a look at that, and then if you still have questions, just let us know, email us, let us know. We can help you out with that. But again, these topics should really be more done. They're done at your sites, and so it's kind of what you all come up with at your sites.
Okay, so I've got the coveted 809 slot to talk about the e-portfolio. So I'm going to make this very brief because this conversation can go on, and at any time anybody can email me, or this meeting room will be open at any time, so we can Zoom chat as well. But the way I would recommend you get to the portfolio online would be to go down here to the home page, and under teaching portfolios, I've got a little sample page that has an instructional video showing you how to find it. Now, that being said, it hasn't worked for everybody. Some external sites have not been able to actually locate the template in the public template gallery. If that happens to you, just shoot me an email and we'll try plan B, which has worked for some other people. I'll just send them an explicit email with the path to the template. So there's no point in me showing you how I would do it because it's going to work for me. So I would encourage you to look at the video, try what the video says, and if it doesn't work, shoot me an email at rpierce@su.edu. So I already had Danny shoot me an chat here that said she tried it and it didn't work for her. And I said, all right, I'll send you an email within 24 hours. We'll see if that works. We had some other people today said that they couldn't find it. The email did work for them though. So where there is a will, there is a way. So the 30-second lecture about the e-portfolio is this. When you're finished, you want to have one place where all your stuff is. You don't want it in a binder. You don't want it on a zip drive. You don't want it on 3 different computers. You're going to have it really in 2 places. Place number 1, you'll be uploading stuff in Canvas as prescribed by the schedule. That's done on purpose with the intention of keeping you on track and getting everything in digital form. Creating a portfolio is a very simple thing. It's one click, pull down the template, and you've got it. Then it's just paint by numbers exercise, adding your digital content to the portfolio. So your teaching philosophy, your slides, your objectives, your lectures, your evaluations, they'll all be in one place. So you could show that to a prospective employer, to other students, where you could quickly reuse it for another, you have to teach that lecture again. Where is all that stuff? Bam, that's where it is. So the university has gone to an e-portfolio for faculty promotion last year. I've been using them in public education since 1998. Right. Very simple to do. It's never been easier to do it. So.
And Dr. Pierce really has made it very, very easy this year for, this has evolved over the last several years. It used to be paper, but last 2 years, I guess, it's been an e-portfolio. It's very slick now where we've developed this template that Richard has up there, and it really makes it easy for you just to upload your materials into that template now. So I think you'll find it very user-friendly, very, very good. Now those portfolios, again, as Richard said, you should, as you complete the material, go ahead and start uploading that material into your portfolio. Don't wait until April comes around and then try to upload everything. Just do it as you go along. Now your e-portfolios will be due about a month before your residency is, when do we have them due? We have them due at the end of April? Is that right?
Sometime in May.
May. Okay. At least about a month or so. We will give you that deadline, but at least about a month or so before your residency is over. Because we then need time to look at your portfolios and give you feedback to make sure that you've met all the requirements of the program at the very end. So that'll be due towards the latter part of the program.
So for sure, before the next meeting, I want to make sure everybody has the template downloaded and is familiar with it. And we'll go through a few brief exercises on how to edit it that time. It's going to look like very similar to this. You'll edit it first. You'll take out Homer's picture, put in your picture, and these tabs. This is where your CV would go. Your teaching philosophy. You see your lectures are broken down into, we've got a couple lectures in there. So these pages are all made, they just don't have any content in them yet. And that's what you will do. Copy and paste probably. So, where am I going to put my slides for lecture one? Well, under lecture one, there's a page set up for lecture one slides. We'll talk about this more next time, but there's a huge affinity between Google Docs and Google Sites. So if I'm you, I'm uploading my PowerPoint to Google Docs, and it's a Google presentation. And I can easily edit this page and insert that slide deck there. So it's real easy. It's real fun. It's not real cool to talk about at 8:14 though. So we'll resume this conversation at our next meeting.
One thing, Richard, before we wrap up, go back to the schedule itself for the pedagogy seminars, and we'll show them in terms of the teaching philosophy what they need to, or excuse me, for the
in Canvas or.
Okay, just go down a little bit for the September. This is the schedule there. Okay, see it says under live discussion September 16th. Teaching portfolio, upload self-introduction, goals, draft of teaching philosophy, pedagogy seminar series schedule, and CV. So that's kind of your assignment before our next time we get together in terms of the teaching portfolio, is to upload that stuff in your teaching portfolio so we know that you all can do that. You have your teaching portfolio started. So.
This might be a really silly question, but can you, once you upload your CV, can you continue to upload, overwrite what was uploaded, with your newer version?
It's a great question, right? So it speaks to the idealized workflow you want to do. You want to probably upload your CV as a Google Doc, and then it's live. Okay. And those edits would matriculate over to the Google site, because really the site's just pulling up the Google Doc. Does that make any sense? Just version control, you don't have to worry about it. Once it's in Google Doc, you would edit it in Google Docs, and thus it would also be edited in Google Sites. So, do it in Word, upload it in Docs, push it over to sites. That's kind of what we're going to do. So I sent a message to all. If you are having problems, send me an email. We'll try plan B. If that doesn't work within 24 hours, let me know and we'll try plan C if necessary.
All right. Any questions? Any last questions before we call this an evening? Anything there? Do I have permission? Okay. Must be one. Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody here? All right, guys. Well, thank you, everyone, for your attention. Thanks for coming online for the first session for the remote sites. And we look forward to chatting with you all in about another month. And I will be emailing you all some things that came up from tonight, just some reminders of different things over the next day or two. So be looking for an email from me, and we'll go from there. Anything else? All right, Nicole and Heather from Reston, if you guys could just stay on the line just for a few minutes, and everybody else can go.
And you guys,
Yeah, and you all stay here too.
we want to touch base with you guys about your lessons.
All right, y'all have a good evening. Thanks.
So while you transition, I'm going to give you guys another copy of these. These are actually mine for your fall lecture. But I started to fill in dates, like working backward dates, and if you didn't have your lecture dates on the ID topic, they're on here. So if you guys want to start filling out yours.
Carolyn is asking if she should stay too.
Normally like more of your responsibility to take the time to fill them out and then share them with everyone.
You know, Carolyn,
Here, so
where is Carolyn?
director,
Carolyn, raise your hand a second. Oh, there you go. Hey, Carolyn.
all your emails to.
We have to figure out where you want to give your lectures. If you want to do a lecture at the school like Heather and Nicole are doing.
Yeah, I think I would like to do the school if that's possible.
Okay. We'll work that out. They're doing one lecture at the school, then one lecture there at Reston, like a CE type lecture.
Okay.
And so if you like, we can do the same thing for you. What we might want to do, though, they are both giving lectures at the school this fall semester. We would have more lectures to give in the spring semester at the school. We're kind of maxed out now on lectures here at the school.
Okay.
For residents. So what might work best for you is if you were to give your first lecture at Reston as kind of a CE type lecture.
Okay.
Then do your second lecture here at the school in the spring semester. You think that would work for you?
Absolutely, that works for me.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that then? I think that would probably be the most helpful. And then what we'll probably do is I'll probably just take you on. I'm mentoring. Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm mentoring both Nicole and Heather, and so I'll probably just mentor you as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So we'll figure all that out. So and I'll work with Kevin with all that. So okay.
All right. Thanks.
And Carolyn is from the pharmacist at Reston, and she's also joined our teaching student program. So I just told her I would mentor her.
Okay.
And she wants to get a lecture at the school. Okay. But we'll have her do hers in the spring. Let me go ahead and just chat with you guys just a minute. So Heather,
I'm here.
So we'll just
I have you doing the tick-borne lecture in the ID module.
Okay.
Okay. That will be October 31st.
Okay.
From 2 to 3.
Okay.
If you like, I can email you that as well.
That'd be great.
We just came up with our lecture schedule this week. So yours is October 31st from 2 to 3. And we'll just do that at Ashburn.
Okay.
Nicole, yours is, I think Amber's maybe communicated with you, but yours is going to be the basics of cohort studies.
Right.
And that's going to be October the 6th. And the lab is October the 9th. So we'll need to give you some more details about that and then have you contact Dr. Tom Ellington, who's the coordinator of that course. So maybe it might be helpful. What I'll do is email you some of the details back.
Okay.
And then have you contact Dr. Ellington, because that lecture's coming up, sooner, obviously,
Right.
with October 6th.
That sounds good.
So,
yes, thank you. So I think you tracked those.
and then the lecture forms that Amber was handing out to the residents here, they're available online. So it's that lecture planning form. So we'll need you to fill out that lecture planning form as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, Nicole, for you, your content expert would be, course coordinator of content expert is actually Tom Ellington, and I'll email you his name and whatnot. And your faculty mentor is myself.
Okay.
Okay. And I will email you. Amber talked to Tom Ellington yesterday and got some more details about that lecture, so we will email you that. Then again, I want you to contact Dr. Ellington so you all can talk as well.
Okay.
And then Heather, for you, for your lecture, I'm your faculty mentor and also your content expert.
Okay.
So that will go on there. And then Carolyn, again, we'll come up with a topic in the spring for you, one of the lectures. Maybe you and I can chat at another point, and I can give you an idea of some of the lectures that are going to be available in the spring. You can decide which lecture you want to do.
Okay.
For the fall, I think you maybe, Kevin, should talk a little bit and try to determine maybe a CE type lecture that you can give at Reston to the pharmacists there.
So again, it's about 40 there and the remainder.
And you can kind of go by the guidelines that we have in that overview of all the different components of the program. But it can be a kind of a therapeutics kind of a topic, or we can be flexible in the type of topic, but it's kind of more of a CE type presentation.
Okay.
Resting. Could even be like, I don't know, if they'll have like a regular CE series, the pharmacist there or anything like that.
Not really, but we'll come up with something.
Okay. Again, maybe you, Kevin, and I, if we want to chat a little bit, you may talk to Kevin and we can talk a little bit more about that after you've kind of thought about it some. Okay, and then let's see, for that's probably good for now. Your small group facilitation experiences, we're working through those at the moment. There is a lab that, well, it's actually kind of more of a small group facilitation as a part of a course that we may get you guys involved in this fall.
Okay.
I'll give you some more details about that. We met with the faculty member about that, and so we may have you actually go to Ashburn and help out a little bit with some small group facilitation there this fall for some of those experiences.
Okay.
But I'll I'll put all that in an email and send it out to you. And then again, we'll get you up with that particular faculty member to get some more details about that. But it'll be towards the end of the semester.
Okay.
So, and then precepting, I think you guys should have some students coming that hopefully Kevin can set you guys up with.
I think Kevin said that we were going to do the block right after winter.
Like January, February.
Okay.
I
So
think he has that set up.
do each of you have a student that you can take?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, I was just talking to him about it today. I'm pretty sure he said he ended up with 2 students at the same time.
Free to go.
So.
If anything comes up, I'll email you or you can.
How about you, Carolyn? Would you have a student that you could take there?
We have a steady stream of students, so it probably wouldn't be the same time as them because they will have taken those 2 students at the same time. But I mean, I have students now, so.
Okay. All right. Well,
maybe I can get Kevin to just assign one specifically to me, and I'll do that at some point.
yeah. And maybe what you and I can do is to work a little bit together as well, so that when you're doing your precepting month, you know, you and I can touch base from time to time, and I can give you some feedback and things like that. You know, Kevin can kind of be your on-site mentor as well, but since, you know, we're working so closely with West and the school, I can work with you some more as well on that.
Okay.
So I'm going to be coming up to Ashburn on some Wednesdays and Fridays this semester. So maybe what I can let you know when I'm coming up in the next couple of weeks. And maybe if you want to go to our site in Ashburn, maybe we can sit down and chat a little bit more about some of that.
Yeah, I live in Ashburn, so that's super easy for me.
Okay. We'll talk with Kevin some, and then again, I'll let you know when I'm coming up to Ashburn. We can get some more of the details kind of hammered out a little bit more.
Okay. Great.
Okay. All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, take care.
I've linked that. X, Y, and Z with that article here. And I'm going to give you 50.
You know when your lecture is?
They weren't.
Yeah, I would know.